are in the moderate to high category, meaning Facebook for them is something that is very important because it's integrated into their lives. Only less than 20% or around 20% fall into the low category, and even then you are including people who have an account in Facebook and log into, just that they don't do it that often. Perhaps they're using another platform, we don't know. Then also we ask about a specific application within Facebook, which is Facebook groups, and that's an important part of the project because we think that the behavioral part of social capital, where people engage and get together for political reasons or for civic reasons, goes mostly in Facebook at least through the uses of Facebook groups. These Facebook groups are, for example, a political one would be, Texans for Obama, right, in Facebook. That would be, people who log into Texans for Obama in a Facebook group would be in that category. And not surprisingly, 80% too are in the low category. Basically, people, what they do is to put a group in their profile, but they never actually engage with the group. They never post a comment. They never do any discussion. So people use Facebook, but Facebook groups, most of them don't do it. And then how do they play our sample in the social capital dimensions? You find that most of them report high levels of life satisfaction, and that shouldn't surprise because college students in general, you don't have responsibilities. Someone else is paying for your funds. For your bills. I mean, you have friends. So basically life is going great, right? And we're not the first ones who find that. I mean, generally, when you're between 18 and 29, the best years of your life. So, but then in social trust, you see something different. Either because we are growing, we don't have the wisdom of older people, but it seems that we are less trustful. Either because the media is, the traditional media is exposing stories about crime. You cannot go out there because someone is gonna, bump into you and do something. Well, we don't know really, and we don't get into that in the paper. But it turns out that most of our respondents are into the moderate and low categories of social trust. And then in civic and political engagement, you see something that is expected. Our students report low levels of political engagement, but higher levels of civic engagement. I don't think I mentioned that these students are not University of Texas students, but Texas A&M and the University of North Texas, and hopefully we're going to be able to incorporate in our sample afterwards UT. But those are the students when I refer to who they are. So now the big question was how to integrate both things. And I didn't want to show you the statistical part because it's boring, but the important part is that we did some multiple regressions, basically seeing if controlling for gender, age, and a number of other controls, is there a relationship between intensity of Facebook use and Facebook groups use and our dependent variables, which are the social capital variables. And we found that in general there are statistically significant and positive relationships. For example, in life satisfaction, heavy users compared to light users report 15% on average higher levels of life satisfaction. In social trust, because there's less variance in social trust, it doesn't surprise that the association between Facebook use and social trust is still positive, but not that high as in life satisfaction. And then with participation, it's interesting because it seems that in the political realm, most of the associations go through Facebook groups use. It seems that students who report higher levels of political activity, when they use Facebook, they express that activity mostly through Facebook groups and not through the traditional profile, in Facebook, which is contacting friends or posting messages on the walls of your friends or stuff like that. But in civic participation, it's the other way around. And in civic participation, that also makes sense because our measure of civic participation asks about, for example, how often do you get together for charity, or how often do you coordinate to do volunteer work. And to that, you don't necessarily need to create a group. You basically just tell your friends, your students, your contacts in your list, we're going to do this for X reason, and so we don't have to create a group. But for political reasons, we were asking about for whom do you vote, or how often do you vote, and it seems that that's a more sophisticated activity, and it gets expressed through Facebook groups. So what do we make out of these results? First, Facebook users, it seems, are more connected, happy, or life satisfied, and engaged than what they get credit for in the mainstream media. So that's, I think, our most important finding. But of course, then again, the relationships are not that strong, which perhaps gives credit to, the more pessimistic view about saying that social network sites and internet and new technology in general is not the panacea for democracy. And I think that because you see the relationships were positive but not that strong. Now, in our sense, we are more agnostic about it because we think that it's good that a technology doesn't have a huge impact on something that's important as social trust or social capital in general. I mean, it would be very troubling that heavy users of Facebook report, 80% higher social trust levels than the other ones. I mean, something should be wrong there. So I think, you can interpret the results both ways. Now, we must insist that this is not a causal effect relationship. I think in the paper the title said the effects of social network sites. I think that's just to grab your attention because using a cross-section, you cannot really test causality, right? You have to do an experiment or you have to use a longitudinal analysis, but that's the thing we're going to do afterwards. So I think there's, at least there's some reason to believe that there might be a causal effect relationship, but I don't want to get into that because usually academics say, oh, you did just a survey and you cannot test causality. So all the time I say, there's an association there, I'm very careful about it. And then, do I have time or? Yeah, okay. So this is good reason, last slide. I think the first time I don't, yeah, good. So lessons for journalists. First thing, okay, this paper was not developed to study social network sites for journalists, but I think that we can still think that some of our findings could be useful for journalists and the media in general. I'm interested in knowing what we think about social network sites. So first thing is that we think that Facebook, at least, is a good structure for connecting people. It's very efficient in that. Also, when they want to share interest and news, it's also a good technology for that. But in general, given the low participation of students in Facebook groups, it seems that this technology is not that good when you want to create a forum for exchanging opinions and to deliberate. There's this idea that with social networks, you get people from different backgrounds together, and they're going to exchange points of view, and the democracy in general is going to benefit from that. Well, basically, when you have 90% of students basically logging into groups but not doing anything with them, I mean, you have to be more skeptical and say, okay, Facebook seems to be good for connecting people, but actually to produce content, different points of view, stuff like that, it's not that good, at least from what we found. And one thought about all these news organizations like Gannett and USA Today creating, their sites, transforming them into social network sites. We think that there's a problem there because, first of all, I think these organizations must ask themselves, like, who's using these social network sites? Like, Facebook is very popular among college students, but that doesn't mean that when these college students graduate, and they're going to still be using that technology, right? So I think that's a question that time will tell, but I think USA Today, for example, who transformed its site into a social network site, I don't know really if they have cleared up who's using those, these kinds of technologies. The second question is, why on earth would someone log into a USA Today social network site if you can get something already from Facebook, which basically doesn't have a boundary, a geographic boundary, and you use Facebook to connect with people who basically you don't see on a face-to-face relationship? What I'm saying is, I think news organizations must ask, why would people switch from the traditional social network sites such as Facebook, MySpace, Cyworld, and Friendster? Well, Friendster doesn't exist anymore here in the US, it's more popular in Asia, but and turn into USA Today social network sites? I think that's a question that no one has answered, and I think it seems to be another example of news organizations emulating a social network site, but not exactly why they're doing that. They think that just because it's a social network site, it's going to be used by people. And the third question is, it seems that, for example, the New York Times and other organizations who have created applications within Facebook, we think are doing a better job, because since we found that Facebook is a good way of spreading the word about events and issues and engagement, then if you can use as a news organization this technology to put out there your message, I think that's more successful. And then a final caveat is that what we found now, perhaps it's already old, perhaps our students who responded 2 months ago our survey are doing something else right now, perhaps they closed their account in Facebook. What I'm saying is that all we found, all we are showing you here is very tentative because these things are evolving, so perhaps next year we're going to have a different story. Thank you very much.
Sebastian, we hope we have questions about